Pirates have been around pretty much as long as boats have. The handful of surviving bits of correspondence from the end of the Bronze Age tell of sea people who were in the process of sacking and destroying cities throughout the Mediterranean. They hit so hard that the complex network of trade and alliances collapsed. Whole civilizations forgot how to read and write. The political order of the time was smashed to bits. Because of that, archaeologists have only vague ideas about who these sea people were or where they were from. So I'd like to start here with the first pirate captain to really distinguish himself enough to be excessively romanticized in the popular consciousness. Little is known about the origins of Captain Henry Morgan. No, not Harry Morgan. There he is. But what we do know is that he was a pirate. For like a minute. Before and after that, he was a personal friend to the governor of Jamaica, privateer for the English crown, scourge of the Spanish Main, famously sacking and pillaging Panama City and a number of other towns, owner of no less than 3 sugar plantations, and eventually a sedentary civil servant of a sort. During his time as a privateer, he and other ship captains were given letters of marque, which allowed them to attack Spanish, French, or Dutch ships, depending on who England was at war with at any given moment. These documents did not give privateers license to attack enemies on land, but the payoff for sacking a city was just too good to not do it if you could. So he did, and that was when he went from privateer to pirate captain.
Well now, that sounds familiar.
Hey man, could you not do that this time? There's a lot of information to get through today.
Fine.
Where was I?
You were saying something about how governments and economic systems incentivize violence.
Was I though?
That's what I took from it.
Sure, okay. Anyway, because of all the sacking and pillaging that made him rich, Morgan was arrested in 1672 for piracy and hauled back to England, where he was universally celebrated as a hero and knighted by Charles II in 1674. I'm not kidding. From there, he was sent back to Jamaica to serve as governor and get even richer off slave labor. Then, in 1688, he died in his bed, the very proud and wealthy owner of 131 other human beings.
So, he did not face any consequences at all.
Nope. Also, for reasons of further historical interest, he's got a rum named after him, and that's kinda gross. Because history happened.
At least it's a bad rum, and everyone knows it.
Yeah, it is bad rum.
Tales were told in days of old of secret maps and sunken gold. But sail with me on southern seas and witness those who lived life free and typically died horribly.
A few years after Governor Captain Sir Henry Morgan died, a handful of slightly more progressive-minded privateers found themselves cut loose by the crown after another war with Spain ended. They were without jobs, prospects, or pensions, not to mention marketable skills. So they banded together as a small but growing fleet and took to raiding merchant ships throughout the Caribbean and the Spanish Main, or what is now called Central America, Mexico, and the coastal states between Texas and Florida. The Republic they founded in Nassau on the island of Providence is considered, in some ways, a precursor to the United States of America, except that the pirates apparently did not recognize slavery as a legitimate institution. While some pirates participated in the Atlantic slave trade and treated enslaved people like any other cargo, others, like Edward Teach, freed any enslaved people they captured and even invited them to join the crew as free people. They also had workers' compensation for anyone seriously injured on the job, scaled to the severity of the injury. Lose an eye in the course of duty? Gold. Lose a leg? More gold. Killed in battle? Big gold for your family or any dependents. And you didn't even have to pay life insurance. They knew the value of workers. Well, some workers. It's hard to find any specific information on the island's prodigious sex trade. It was legal, as much as anything could be described as legal in a city run by pirates, but pimps were left to regulate more or less however they wanted, and that never goes right. Human trafficking on the island was rampant, and, Apparently, it still is. In fact, any woman who wasn't an active pirate was mostly treated like property, and woe betide a woman of any status accused of infidelity. To put it delicately, the Pirate Code explicitly mandated corporal punishment for women accused of adultery, and there's no indication that the same was true for men. Nothing about any of that is surprising, and it's pretty rotten. So, let's move on to the pirate government. The pirates of Nassau practiced a kind of direct democracy. Ship captains and the settlement's magistrate were elected by popular vote and could, in theory, be recalled at almost any time. Major decisions were decided by referendum among all concerned. Like, if your job on a ship was peeling potatoes, your vote was worth the same as anyone's, and the captain had to abide by the results or face mutiny. The first magistrate of the Pirate Republic was a big believer in meritocracy named Benjamin Hornigold, the most pirate captain name ever, and by all accounts he seems to have been a fair and decent guy. For his time and place, at least. God, that's complicated. Near as I can tell, the Pirate Republic was treated as a mere diplomatic inconvenience by England. Until the pirates started attacking English ships. They were then proclaimed to be hostis humani generis, or enemies of the human race, because England just gets to decide that kind of stuff. Now, Ben Hornigold held out against provoking England as long as he could, but democracy is democracy, and the pirates of Nassau wanted to put English ships in their crosshairs. And why not? The English crown was the reason most of them were pirates in the first place. You sow the dragon's teeth, you reap, well, consequences. Speaking of which, here's a list of some of those pirate captains and how they died.
Sam Bellamy, killed when his ship sank in a storm off Massachusetts. Ben Hornigold, killed in a shipwreck somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico, ironically while he was chasing pirates for the English crown. Edward Blackbeard Tetch, killed in battle with Lieutenant Robert Maynard in the most legendarily badass way. Mary Read, died in prison, likely of fever. Henry Jennings, died in prison, or possibly free and surrounded by family. No one really knows. Black Caesar, no other known alias, hanged in Williamsburg, Virginia. Charles Vane, hanged in Port Royal. John Calico Jack Rackham, also hanged in Port Royal. Anne Bonny. Okay, so legal documents suggest she was sporadically imprisoned up until she died, but no one bothered to record whether she died in prison or out, just that she was, quote, not executed.
So ends the golden age of pirates.
A rare historic experiment in actual anarchy.
I mean, we're not talking about a utopia here. They still, killed each other in duels over personal grudges and violently raided ships for a living. And that's not ideal?
The ships belonged to enslavers, royalty, and various other exploiters of human misery. I have little sympathy.
Sure. I mean, we could talk a bit about press gangs and how a lot of the people on those ships were not there voluntarily. But anyway, let's just skip ahead here to some really barbaric times.
The 20th century?
The 20th century. So history tells of a man remembered better by another name, but I'm going to call him Ricardo Clement, because if I say his real name, that will attract the kind of attention nobody wants. So for the rest of the video, when I say Ricardo, you'll know I'm talking about Eichmann.
Did you not just say?
Anyway, Ricardo was arrested for a whole bunch of crimes, like literally millions of murders, and they had all kinds of receipts. This was not a controversial claim. The problem was jurisdiction. Ricardo was apprehended in South America and tried in the Middle East for crimes committed in Europe. That's not really something you can do. Except the old hostis humani generis thing was still on the books and recognized internationally. Charging Ricardo with piracy would functionally allow for geographically limitless jurisdiction. So the prosecution hinged on, among other things, proving he was legally a pirate. I would love to meet the god-tier, galaxy-brained individual who threw that idea on the board. I mean, if there was ever anyone who earned the title hostis humani generis, it was Ricardo. And, all his friends. But whoever thought to actually charge him with that crime was either crazy or a genius. Maybe both? Who knows? Happily, it worked, and Ricardo Clement was hanged shortly thereafter, still maintaining that he was only following orders to save his country or some bullshit like that. Like, what a colossal asshole, right?
Yes, congratulations for knowing that genocide is bad. Are you going to talk about the Gulf of Aden now, or...?
Yeah, I really don't feel qualified for this.
Come on, man. You've done the research. I've seen your notes. You are ready.
Can you do it?
Are you sure?
Man, I just think this is a little more in your wheelhouse, you know? Like, I've never been there, but I think you have, right? Like, a couple times?
I would rather not talk about that, but I am familiar with the area. So, to begin with, the Gulf of Aden lies between Yemen and Somalia. When the Somali central government collapsed in the early 1990s, the military was disbanded and dispersed. Pieces of the country were left in the hands of fractured local governments, autonomous self-appointed leaders, and occasional interlopers representing external interests. In the chaos, foreign fishing vessels began illegal operations in the Gulf, leaving local communities with badly depleted resources. Somali fishing communities responded by forming armed patrols, then escalated to kidnapping crew members for ransom. Eventually, some took up piracy and began to hijack foreign vessels. Since the Gulf of Aden is the gateway to the Red Sea and Suez Canal, this had deleterious effects on international trade. 33 nations, with the cooperation of the Somali Transitional Federal Government, joined forces to create a coalition known as Combined Task Force 150 to eliminate their problem. Various pirate groups, meanwhile, had established social and political ties throughout the region. Some worked with local governments to fight insurgencies. Others cooperated with rebel forces or did whatever else was necessary for survival. But pressure from the TFG and international policing gradually wore them down. By 2017, the age of pirates in the Gulf of Aden was effectively ended, though various international task forces still patrol the Gulf to make sure it stays ended. Unlike romanticized heroes from the golden age of the Pirate Republic in Nassau, these pirates were presented in popular discourse as a nameless, faceless, menacing horde, and today are barely remembered as the same.
That's, shit, man. That seems really unfair.
Agreed.
So, no, like, manifesto this month?
I mean, you know what I think.
I guess you would have immediately sunk the foreign fishing vessels and eaten their crews.
Ew, no, I don't eat workers.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense now that you say it.
I am tracking down the owner of a cannery that processed fish stolen from Somali waters, though.
There it is. So, piracy, am I right? I mean, yeah, it's a crime, I guess. A crime that seems to be historically predicated in most cases on the desperation of the perpetrator. Though occasionally, as in the cases of Henry Morgan and Ricardo Clement, you get one who is pathologically greedy or, you know, just unfathomably evil and enabled by the powerfully venal, self-interested dipshits who surround them. I feel like there should be a legal distinction between those two. Anyway, if you are willing and prepared to enable my relatively harmless need for remuneration, you can follow the links in the description and send money to my Patreon or Ko-fi, whichever works better for you. No pressure, obviously. Thank you again to my generous patrons, whose names you see here now forever. They are immortal now, which has both, you know, benefits and probably drawbacks. I don't know. You have to ask them. If you enjoyed the video or learned something, God help you if you're learning from me. But anyway, if any of that, throw me a like, a subscribe, a notifications thingy, drop a comment, do all the things. And I've got the usual links to my Twitter and Instagram and SoundCloud and all that stuff. Join me again next month as we walk right off the plank and just free fall into the 21st century when piracy went online. just like everything else did. Until then, this is the Silver Samaritan saying good luck and stay safe.